seeing something, without authority, and made wild, desperate efforts to break through the barrier that had been put up against them by French and British staffs in the zone of war. Many of them were arrested, put into prison, let out, caught again in forbidden places, rearrested, and expelled from France. That was after fantastic adventures in which they saw what war meant in civilized countries where vast populations were made fugitives of fear, where millions of women and children and old people became wanderers along the roads in a tide of human misery, with the red flame of war behind them and following them, and where the first battalions of youth, so gay in their approach to war, so confident of victory, so careless of the dangers, which they did not know, came back maimed and mangled and blinded and wrecked in the backwash of retreat, which presently became a spate through Belgium and the north of France, swamping over many cities and thousands of villages and many fields. Those young writing men, who had set out in a spirit of adventure, went back to Fleet Street with a queer look in their eyes, unable to write the things they had seen, unable to tell them to people who had not seen and could not understand, because there was no code of words which could convey the picture of that wild agony of peoples, that smashing of all civilized laws, to men and women who still thought of war in terms of heroic pageantry. "Had a good time?" asked a colleague along the corridor, hardly waiting for an answer. A good time? God, did people think it was amusing to be an onlooker of world tragedy? One of them remembered a lady of France with a small boy who had fled from Charleville, which was in flames and smoke. She was weak with hunger, with dirty and bedraggled skirts on her flight, and she had heard that her husband was in the battle that was now being fought round their own town. She was brave, pointed out the line of the German advance on the map, and it was in a troop train crowded with French soldiers, and then burst into wild weeping, clasping the hand of an English writing man so that her nails dug into his flesh. I remember her still. "Courage, maman, courage, petit maman," said the boy of 8. Through Amiens at night had come a French army in retreat. There were dead and wounded on their wagons. Cuirassiers stumbled as they led their tired horses. Crowds of people with white faces like ghosts in the darkness stared at their men retreating like this through their city, and knew that the enemy was close behind. "Nous sommes perdus," whispered a woman, and gave a wailing cry. People were fighting their way into railway trucks at every station for hundreds of miles across northern France. Women were beseeching a place for the sake of their babes. There was no food for them on journeys of 19 hours or more. They fainted with heat and hunger. An old woman died, and her corpse blocked up the lavatory. At night they slept on the pavements in cities invaded by fugitives. At Ferne in Belgium and at Dunkirk on the coast of France, there were columns of ambulances bringing in an endless tide of wounded. They were laid out stretcher by stretcher in station yards, 500 at a time. Some of their faces were masks of clotted blood. Some of their bodies were horribly torn. They breathed with a hard snuffle. A foul smell came from them. At Chartres they were swilling over the station hall with disinfecting fluid after getting through one day's wounded. The French doctor in charge had received a telegram from the Director of Medical Services. Make ready for 40,000 wounded. It was during the first Battle of the Marne. "It is impossible," said the French doctor. 400,000 people were in flight from Antwerp, into which big shells were falling, as English correspondents flattened themselves against the walls and said, "God in heaven!" 250,000 people coming across the Scheldt in rowing boats, sailing craft, rafts, invaded one village in Holland. They had no food. Children were mad with fright. Young mothers had no milk in their breasts. It was cold at night, and there were only a few canal boats and fishermen's cottages, and in them were